Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. Okay, are there any absolutes? You hear it all the time. There are no absolutes. You're sitting around having a dinner party with Azrionok and Zorio and scientific discussion, and someone says, well, there are no absolutes, and everybody murmurs, ah, yes, yes, because that's the only way to be profound, is to say, well, we all know that there are no absolutes. But are there really no absolutes? Well, if you say that there are no absolutes, absolutely no absolutes, you are uttering an absolute. I quote from John Galt's speech in For the New Intellectual. There are no absolutes, they chatter, blinking out the fact that they are uttering an absolute. This was on a video of John Williams, J0HNWI11IAMS, and his video is called Ayn Rand is an Extremist. And on this video, Protean View, Proteanview, says something about there are no absolutes. And I called him a moron before I even saw who it was. He generally, I thought, made pretty good, pretty reasonable comments. And I just replied and called him a moron before I even saw who I was replying to. And he is a moron. That means that he hasn't therefore read For the New Intellectual. He hasn't read Galt's speech. He hasn't read Atlas Shrugged. And he hasn't read Capitalism the Unideal. He hasn't read The Virtue of Selfishness. It's one thing to go around saying that people who like Ayn Rand are weird. It's another thing to spout off without knowing what you're talking about. There are absolutes. And if you say there aren't any, that's an absolute too. Now, absolute is a floating abstraction. Let's hammer it down just a bit, shall we? In John Galt's speech, it says, reality is an absolute. Existence is an absolute. A speck of dust is an absolute. And so is a human life. Whether you live or die is an absolute. Whether you have a piece of bread or not is an absolute. Whether you eat your bread or see it vanish into a looter's stomach is an absolute. There are absolutes. Reality is replete with absolutes. Everything is an absolute. Reality is an absolute. The number of people in this room right now is an absolute. 10 seconds from now, somebody could walk into the room, and yet it wouldn't change how many people were there 10 seconds before. Everything that is real is an absolute. Only the unreal is not absolute. So, what do you mean when you say there are no absolutes? It couldn't have any meaning. That means that you're gibbering, jabbering, babbling. Yes, there are absolutes. There are absolutes in politics. One of my favorite absolutes in politics is, if you attack my country, your country will be destroyed and occupied. I like that one. One of my absolutes that I like in politics is, if you initiate force, the law will pursue you. I like this. He says that there are no political absolutes. Another political absolute is that if the government takes on a project, they reserve the initiation of force. That's the definition of government, so that's fine. An absolute in economic, bad money drives out good. An absolute in war. Every bullet that hits any soldier is an absolute in war. And whether it kills the soldier or not is an absolute. It's meaningless to say there are no absolutes. Yes, there are absolutes. There are political absolutes. Just you come to my house with a gun and threaten me and find out if there are political absolutes. Yes, there are political absolutes. You cannot do certain things. And you say it would be different in a different place, in a different time, in a different culture, a different city. But the results of it wouldn't be different. So whether or not it happens really is simply a binary case. Yes, it happened, yes, or no, it didn't happen. And whether it did or didn't happen is absolutely true in either case. It's the most meaningless thing, and like I said, if you're sitting around with a bunch of morons like Zorio and Azrionok in scientific discussion, you can get around with that. You can say there are no absolutes, and everybody will say, oh, yeah, that's very good, and, good point. But not when you're in the public eye of people who are a little bit more reasonable.